Why are you awake at 3:17 a.m. with your heart pounding like a war drum? Why does every fiber in your being feel like something massive is about to shatter the silence of your ordinary life? Why does the name July 12th, 2025 make your spirit tremble before your mind even understands why? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What if I told you that heaven has a clock with your name engraved on it, and it's about to strike midnight? You weren't meant to be asleep tonight. That restless stirring in your chest isn't insomnia, it's a divine alarm system. Something in the spiritual realm is moving, shifting, preparing for a moment that will split time itself. And you, sitting there in the darkness with nothing but questions and an inexplicable knowing, you're feeling the tremors of eternity. Here's the shocking truth: they don't want you to know. Time is not your enemy, it's your escort to destiny. Every second that's passed, every year you've survived, every midnight you've wrestled with God in silence, it's all been leading to this. July 12th, 2025 isn't just a date on your calendar. It's a divine alarm that's been set since before you took your first breath. The enemy has been working overtime to convince you that your season is over, that your best years are behind you, that heaven's moved on without you. But what if everything you've endured, every heartbreak, every closed door, every night you cried yourself to sleep, wondering if God remembered your name? What if all of that was preparation for what's about to unfold? Before we go deeper into this sacred moment, I want to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling, whether you give or not. I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message is already resonating with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith right now. As these words pierce through the veil between the natural and supernatural, I can feel it. Someone listening, maybe you just felt their spirit leap, that flutter in your chest when I mentioned heaven's clock, that sudden warmth spreading through your being. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. If your spirit just trembled when I said that if something deep inside you is saying, "This is for me," drop a comment right now. I feel the clock. Heaven sees that declaration. Hell fears it. And what happens next will prove that you weren't led to this message by accident. The clock is ticking, chosen one, and you're about to discover why. How long have you been sitting in rooms where your voice once mattered, watching younger faces turn away when you speak? How many times have you bitten your tongue when family gatherings happen around you? Not with you. When did you become the person they pat on the head instead of the one they seek for wisdom? Dear chosen one, I see you there, 73 years old, maybe 85, perhaps 92, and you're carrying a weight that has no name. It's the weight of watching your own relevance slip through arthritic fingers like sand. It's the burden of being treated like yesterday's newspaper when you still have tomorrow's answers burning in your chest. You've outlived friends who promised to grow old with you. You've buried dreams that once kept you awake with excitement. Now, they keep you awake with regret. You've watched your own name fade in your family's eyes until you've become background music in conversations that used to revolve around your wisdom. They love you, yes, but they've stopped listening. They've stopped asking. They've stopped expecting anything from you except quiet compliance and grateful smiles. The most devastating part isn't the physical limitations. It's not the medications lined up on your kitchen counter like tiny soldiers fighting a war you're not sure you want to win. It's not even the mirror that reflects a stranger's face back at you. The most devastating part is the silence. You've been living like a grandfather clock unplugged, crafted with exquisite purpose, built to announce the hours, designed to command attention with every chime. But now you sit in the corner, ornamental, beautiful perhaps, but no longer heard. Your mechanisms still work perfectly. Your wisdom still keeps perfect time. But the world has moved on to digital displays and smartphone alarms. Remember when your voice carried weight, when people hung on your words because they knew you'd walked roads they were just beginning to travel. Remember when your prayers felt like thunder and your presence shifted atmospheres. Remember when you believed that the best was yet to come instead of hoping that the worst was behind you. But here's what cuts deepest. After decades of faithful service, after tithing when you couldn't afford groceries, after praying through nights when heaven felt like brass, after raising children and supporting churches and building communities, you're sitting there wondering if God Himself has moved you to the inactive file. Ecclesiastes 3:1 tells us there's a time for everything under heaven. But which time is this? Is this your time to fade quietly into the background? Is this your season to watch from the sidelines while others run the race? Is this what faithfulness earns in the end? Invisibility. You wake up at 3 a.m., not because your bladder calls, but because your soul does. In those quiet hours when the world sleeps, you wrestle with questions that have no easy answers. Did I waste the life you gave me? God, did I miss the boat somehow? Was I supposed to do more? Be more, matter more. The silence that greets these midnight inquiries feels like an answer in itself. Your doctor talks to your children about you as if you're not sitting right there. Cashiers speak louder and slower as if age has stolen your intelligence along with your hearing. Society has written you off as a sweet reminder of the past instead of recognizing you as a powerful force for the future. But what if I told you something that would shatter everything you've believed about this season of your life? What if the quiet wasn't your disqualification, but your calibration? What if heaven never stopped counting every prayer, every tear, every moment you felt forgotten? What if, while the world unplugged you, God was simply fine-tuning your frequency? What if every year of waiting, every season of silence, every moment of feeling invisible was actually God preparing you for the most important announcement of your lifetime? Psalm 92:14 declares, "They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green. Not they might bear fruit. Not they used to bear fruit. They will bear fruit." Present tense, active, ongoing. The Hebrew word here is nuvi, which means to germinate, to flourish, to bring forth abundance. You think you're in winter, but God says you're in harvest season. Isaiah 46:4 thunders with divine promise. Even to your old age and gray hairs, I am He. I am He who will sustain you. I have made you, and I will carry you. I will sustain you and I will rescue you. Even to your old age, not despite your old age, not in spite of your limitations, even to your old age, as if this moment, this very season, is when God's power shines brightest. But here's the question that's going to either break your heart or heal it forever. What if July 12th, 2025, isn't just another date on a calendar you barely recognize anymore? What if it's the moment when heaven's clock, which has been ticking steadily through every silent season of your life, finally strikes the hour you've been waiting for without even knowing you were waiting? If you've felt invisible in rooms you once led, if you've bitten your tongue when you used to speak prophetically, if you've wondered if your time has passed while watching others step into destinies that feel like echoes of your forgotten dreams, comment now. He still sees me. Don't scroll past this moment. That's not just a comment. It's your covenant with eternity itself. Because what I'm about to reveal next will prove that your grandfather clock wasn't unplugged at all. It was simply being reset for the most important hour of your entire life. You hear that sound, don't you? That rhythmic pounding that wakes you at 3 a.m. That relentless reminder that time is slipping through your fingers like sand. You think it's your heart racing with anxiety about how much time you have left. But what if I told you that what you're hearing isn't the countdown to your end? It's the drumbeat of your beginning. Heaven keeps time differently than earth. Chosen one. And July 12th, 2025, isn't just a number on your calendar. It's a knock on the door of eternity. And that door has your name carved into the wood. Galatians 4:4 declares, "In the fullness of time, God sent forth his Son." Did you catch that? In the fullness of time, not when it was convenient, not when the world was ready. In the fullness, when every piece of the divine puzzle was perfectly positioned for maximum impact. God doesn't move by your watch. He moves by divine appointment. And right now, as these words penetrate your spirit, God's clock is ticking toward your fullness of time. But here's what's going to shake you to your core. You've been reading God's clock wrong your entire life. You think the hour hand represents how much time you have left. But God's hour hand is mercy that's been moving steadily toward you for decades, positioning itself for this exact moment. His minute hand isn't counting down your remaining years, it's movement, divine movement, that's been orchestrating every detail of your life for what's about to unfold. And the second hand, dear one, that second hand is obedience, and it's pointing directly at you right now. Look at Moses, 80 years old, when he heard that voice from the burning bush. 80. Society would have handed him a retirement watch and a rocking chair. But heaven's second hand was pointing directly at him, and God said, "Now you're ready. Now you understand weakness. Now you know what it means to depend entirely on me." Abraham was 75 when God called him to leave everything familiar and follow a promise he couldn't see. 75 years of preparation for a journey that would birth nations. The world saw an old man chasing impossible dreams. God saw a perfectly timed vessel ready to carry eternal purpose. And Anna, precious Anna, the prophetess, 84 years old, spending every single day in the temple. People probably whispered, "Poor old Anna, still hanging around, still hoping." But when baby Jesus walked through those temple doors, heaven's second hand was pointing directly at her weathered hands, and she became the first person to proclaim the Messiah to all of Jerusalem. Do you see the pattern? Do you understand what God is trying to tell you? The ticking you've been hearing isn't time running out, it's time aligning up. But let me ask you something that's going to cut deep into your soul. How many nights have you lain awake, listening to that clock on your nightstand, feeling like every tick is stealing something from you? How many mornings have you looked in the mirror and seen time as your enemy instead of your ally? How many years have you wasted believing the lie that your season is over? You've been counting down when God has been counting up. Every heartbreak you survived added another digit to your spiritual authority. Every loss you endured deposited another coin into your account of compassion. Every year you thought was taking something away was actually building something inside you that this world desperately needs. Some of you are sitting there thinking, but I'm 70, I'm 80, I'm 90, surely my time has passed. Let me shock you with truth that's going to revolutionize how you see your remaining years. What if every year you survived was not time wasted, but fuel for a fire that begins now? What if that arthritis in your hands is God's way of slowing you down so you'll finally learn to depend on His strength? What if that slower pace isn't limitation? It's preparation for carrying something so precious it requires careful, deliberate steps. What if those sleepless nights weren't punishment, but private tutorials with the Holy Spirit? The clock isn't ticking against you. Beloved, it's ticking for you. But here's where it gets personal. And I need you to listen with every fiber of your being. That restlessness you feel, that sense that something is building, that inexplicable knowing that your story isn't over, that's not wishful thinking. That's heaven's alarm system going off in your spirit, because July 12th, 2025 is approaching like a freight train loaded with destiny. You think you're hearing the sound of time running out. What if it's actually the sound of time lining up? What if every tick isn't marking what you've lost, but measuring what you're about to gain? The enemy has been lying to you, whispering that you're in the final chapters of your life. But what if you're actually standing at the opening page of your greatest chapter? What if everything you've been through was the prologue, and your real story, the one that will echo through eternity, is just beginning? Heaven's clock isn't counting down to your sunset, it's counting up to your sunrise. And July 12th, 2025 is the moment when that alarm goes off and the world discovers what God has been preparing in the secret place of your heart for 7, 8, 9 decades. But here's the question that will determine everything. When heaven's clock strikes your appointed hour, will you be ready to answer? You felt that clock ticking, didn't you? That recognition in your spirit when I mentioned July 12th, 2025. But now, I need to tell you something that's going to shatter every lie you've believed about your suffering. Something that will make your blood run cold and your spirit burn with holy fire at the same time. The cancer that nearly took you at 58. The stroke that left you questioning everything at 72. The betrayal that broke your heart into a million pieces when you trusted someone with your whole soul. The financial collapse that left you eating beans and rice for 6 months straight. The silence in your living room after they buried your spouse of 47 years. Those weren't coincidences. Chosen one. Those were coordinated attacks. Look me in the eyes right now. Every single battle you fought, every midnight you've spent on your knees, wondering if God had forgotten your address. Every doctor's appointment where they spoke in whispers about your future, none of it was random. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on empty targets. He doesn't deploy his fiercest demons against people who pose no threat to his kingdom. But you've been in his crosshairs since the day you were born, because hell saw something about July 12th, 2025, that you're just now beginning to understand. Think back to that moment when your world first fell apart. Really think back. You were probably 45, maybe 55, just hitting your stride, finally feeling like life was making sense. That's when it started, wasn't it? The first wave of attacks that left you asking, God, what did I do wrong? Nothing. You did nothing wrong. The devil saw heaven's clock with your name on it, and he panicked. He saw what God was building in you through those coming decades of fire, and he launched everything he had to stop it. Every betrayal was a bullet aimed at your faith. Every financial crisis was designed to make you doubt God's provision. Every health scare was calculated to make you question if you'd live long enough to see your purpose fulfilled. Remember Job. The Bible tells us in Job 1:8 that God himself pointed Job out to Satan and said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Why would God do that? Because Job carried something so precious, so dangerous to the kingdom of darkness, that hell had to test it. And what happened? Every attack only refined Job's faith like gold in the fire. You've been living Job's story, haven't you? That heart attack at 62 that made you change everything about how you lived. That wasn't your body failing you. That was hell trying to silence you before your voice could shake nations. That financial ruin that forced you to depend on God like never before. That wasn't bad luck. That was boot camp for supernatural provision. That loneliness that drove you to your knees every single night for 3 years straight. That wasn't abandonment. That was intensive training in hearing God's voice above all the noise. The enemy thought he was breaking you. God was making you unbreakable. Here's what terrifies hell about you right now. It's not that you're young and strong and full of energy. It's that you've been through the fire and you're still standing. You've walked through the valley of the shadow of death and you fear no evil. You've learned to trust God in the dark. And that kind of faith is nuclear weapons to the kingdom of darkness. Every gray hair on your head is a battle scar. Every line on your face is a map of victories. Every medication you take is proof that you survived what was meant to destroy you. You think those are signs of weakness. Those are your credentials for the assignment that's coming on July 12th. The widow in 1 Kings 17 was down to her last meal when Elijah showed up, her last handful of flour, her last drop of oil. She was preparing to die. But God didn't send Elijah to just any widow. He sent him to the one who had been refined by lack, tested by loss, prepared by pain. And when she gave from her emptiness, her jar never ran dry again. That's you, chosen one. You've been refined by lack, tested by loss, prepared by pain. And now, God is about to show you why. But let me ask you something that's going to cut deep. How many times have you apologized for your struggle? How many times have you felt shame about your scars? How many times have you thought, if I was really chosen, this wouldn't have happened to me? Stop. Right there. Your scars aren't disqualifications. They're your qualifications. Your pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every tear you've cried in secret was liquid gold being refined in the furnace of your faith. The enemy fought you so hard because he saw the clock before you did. He saw July 12th, 2025, written in heaven's calendar, and he knew that when that moment arrives, when you finally step into what God has been preparing you for your entire life, hell itself will shake. If your pain was preparation, if your battles were boot camp, if your suffering was strategic targeting from an enemy who saw your future before you did, say it now in the comments. I'm still ticking. That's not poetic. That's prophetic. That's your declaration that every attack failed. That's your testimony that the clock in heaven with your name on it is still counting down to something glorious. Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly what the enemy was trying to stop. Dear chosen one, you've been standing at the edge of something sacred your entire life. Haven't you? All those years when you whispered into the darkness, God, are you still there? All those moments when your knees hit the floor and your tears hit the carpet, wondering if your prayers were bouncing off the ceiling like rubber balls. You thought the silence was abandonment. But what if I told you it was God preparing the atmosphere for your entrance? Look at me. Really look at me. Do you see what's happening right now? You're not just watching a video. You're standing at the threshold between who you've been and who you're about to become. This isn't coincidence. This is divine orchestration. Let me tell you about Anna. Luke chapter 2, verses 36 through 38, 84 years old. Think about that for a moment. 84 years of waiting, praying, believing when belief hurt more than doubt. She'd been a widow for most of her adult life, spending every single day in the temple, fasting and praying while younger people passed by, probably thinking, poor old Anna, still hanging around the temple after all these years. They saw an elderly woman clinging to outdated hope. God saw a prophet in position. For 84 years, Anna's life looked like one long, endless intermission. But on the day Mary and Joseph walked through those temple doors carrying baby Jesus, everything changed. Anna wasn't just present, she was prepared. She wasn't just hoping, she was ready. In one moment, 8 decades of faithfulness exploded into eternal purpose. Anna didn't waste a second feeling sorry for herself about the years of waiting. The Bible says she immediately began giving thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were looking forward to the redemption of Jerusalem. At 84 years old, she became Jerusalem's first evangelist. What if your entire life has been Anna's story? What if every year you've felt forgotten was actually a year of preparation? What if every prayer that seemed to go unanswered was building spiritual muscle you didn't know you were developing? You've been a locked grandfather clock, haven't you? Standing tall, beautifully crafted, carrying the weight of time within your frame, but silent, the hands frozen, the chimes muted. People walk past you and see an antique, something from another era, something that served its purpose. But today, right now, God is reaching for the key. Do you feel that stirring in your chest? That's not nostalgia. That's the sound of divine timing clicking into place. That's the moment when heaven says, now, right now, everything you've survived has led to this. Moses was 80 when God called him to deliver a nation. Abraham was 99 when God renewed his covenant. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your age isn't your expiration date, it's your appointment time. Psalm 90:12 cries out, "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." But here's what most people miss about that verse. It's not asking God to help us count down to death. It's begging God to help us understand that every single day we've lived has been building towards something magnificent. You've numbered your days in tears. You've numbered them in loss. You've numbered them in disappointment. But what if God has been numbering them in purpose? What if every sunrise you've witnessed, every midnight you've survived, every season you've endured has been adding to an equation that's about to equal extraordinary? The enemy wants you to believe that July 12th, 2025 is just another date on a calendar that's running out of pages. But what if it's the day heaven stops whispering and starts shouting? What if it's the moment when everything you've carried in silence finally finds its voice? Listen to me carefully. You didn't survive everything you've survived just to spend your remaining years in quiet resignation. You didn't weather every storm just to dock your boat in the harbor of good enough. You didn't endure the refiner's fire just to sit on a shelf collecting dust. You survived because you're dangerous to darkness. You endured because you're essential to someone's deliverance. You're still here because your moment isn't over. It's approaching like a freight train loaded with divine purpose. But here's what terrifies me. Here's what keeps me awake at night, praying for people exactly like you. What if July 12th is the last time heaven knocks on your door like this? What if this is the final invitation to step into what you've been prepared for your entire life? I'm not talking about fear tactics. I'm talking about divine urgency. There's a difference between manipulation and revelation, between pressure and prophecy. And right now, I'm feeling the weight of eternity pressing against this moment. What if that grandfather clock that's been silent for decades is about to chime? What if those hands that have been frozen in time are about to move? What if the key God is holding isn't just for today, but for the transformation of everything you touch from this moment forward? Your children need to see you step into your authority. Your grandchildren need to witness what it looks like when someone refuses to fade quietly into the background. Your community needs the wisdom that only comes from walking through fire and choosing to dance in the flames. The threshold is beneath your feet. The door is in front of you. The key is in God's hand, and He's reaching toward the lock of your heart. What if July 12th is the last time heaven knocks like this, chosen one, for 70, 80, maybe 90 years? You've been living with a lie so devastating, so carefully crafted by the enemy, that it's stolen more destinies than every disease, every war, every tragedy combined. You've believed that you were waiting on God's timing. You've convinced yourself that heaven's clock was broken, that the angels forgot to set your alarm, that somehow your appointment got lost in the celestial filing system. But what I'm about to reveal to you will shatter that deception forever and ignite a fire in your spirit that will burn until your final breath. You were never waiting on time. Time was waiting on you. Let that sink into the deepest places of your soul. Every year you thought was wasted, every decade you believed was too late, every moment you whispered, "I missed my chance," you had it backwards. Heaven wasn't slow. Heaven was patient. The Almighty wasn't ignoring you. He was preparing you, and that clock you thought was broken. It was perfectly calibrated, counting down not to your expiration, but to your activation. Listen to what Ecclesiastes 3:1 declares with thunderous authority. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. Notice it doesn't say, to everything there was a season. Present tense. Active. Your season isn't behind you. It's surrounding you like the very air you breathe. But here's the revelation that's going to blow your mind and break every chain of limitation the enemy has wrapped around your destiny. The angels didn't forget your name. They were guarding the moment you finally said, I'm ready. Think about Moses, 80 years old, when God called him from that burning bush. 80. You think those 40 years in Pharaoh's palace were preparation. You think those 40 years in the wilderness were punishment number beloved. Those 80 years were God's way of saying, I need someone who's been broken enough to trust me completely, seasoned enough to handle authority, and desperate enough to obey without question. When Moses said, Who am I that I should go? God didn't give him a pep talk about his qualifications. He gave him a promise, I will be with you. That's not about Moses' readiness. That's about God's faithfulness. Sarah laughed at 90 when God promised her Isaac 90. But Genesis 21:2 tells us she conceived at the set time of which God had spoken. Not at the time Sarah thought was convenient. Not at the time the world said was possible. At the set time, the appointed time. The time heaven had been waiting for her to stop laughing at the impossible and start believing in the God of the impossible. And here's what's going to rock you to your core. Dear one, every rejection you faced, every door that slammed shut, every opportunity that passed you by, none of that was God's no. That was God's not yet. He was waiting for you to get desperate enough to depend on Him completely, waiting for you to get humble enough to let Him get all the glory, waiting for you to get broken enough to become a vessel He could pour Himself through without you taking the credit. The enemy has been whispering lies in your ear for decades. You're too old now. You missed your window. God's moved on to someone younger, someone more qualified, someone who didn't make the mistakes you made. But I'm here to tell you that every single one of those whispers was designed to keep you from this moment, this revelation, this awakening to the truth that heaven's clock wasn't ticking toward your deadline. It was ticking toward your divine appointment. You want to know why you survived that heart attack at 65, why you made it through that depression that nearly killed you, why you're still standing when others who seemed stronger fell, because heaven needed you alive for July 12th, 2025. Because the world is finally desperate enough to receive what only you can give. Because this generation needs what only decades of walking with God can produce. This is your legacy window. This is your resurrection moment. This is the revival that wears wrinkles and walks with a cane and carries the authority of someone who's been tested by fire and proven faithful. Caleb understood this when he declared at 85, Give me this mountain. He didn't say, Give me a rocking chair. He didn't say, Give me a quiet retirement. He said, Give me the giants. Give me the impossible. Give me the battle everyone else is afraid to fight. That's your declaration moment, chosen one. That's your I'm ready that heaven has been waiting to hear. Not when you feel qualified, not when you understand the plan, not when your circumstances look perfect. Right now. In your weakness, in your weariness, in your wonder if it's really possible. The clock isn't ticking because time is running out. The clock is ticking because your moment has arrived. Every tick is heaven saying, now, now, now. Every beat of your heart is God's reminder that while you have breath, you have purpose. If this is your moment, and you know in your spirit it is, don't just comment, don't just like, don't just share. This requires more than digital response. This demands declaration. Stand up wherever you are right now. I don't care if you're in a wheelchair. Stand up in your spirit. Look toward heaven and declare out loud in your home, with the authority of someone who just remembered who they are, Lord, I'm stepping into the clock because chosen one. Time wasn't waiting to run out on you. Time was waiting to run through you. But here's where the midnight hour gets dangerous. Chosen one. Here's where the revelation turns its searchlight inward and shows you something that will either destroy you or deliver you forever. You've been so busy looking for the enemy outside your door that you never considered he might have been whispering from inside your own mirror all along. Midnight reveals the monster, and sometimes it's the one inside you. Look at yourself right now. Really look. What do you see? Do you see the face of someone God is proud of? Or do you see the accumulation of every mistake, every wrong turn, every moment you chose fear over faith? Be honest with me. When you stare into your own eyes at 3 a.m., what voice do you hear? You should have done more. You wasted the best years of your life. You're too old now. You missed your chance. God could never use someone like you. That voice has been your constant companion for decades, hasn't it? It's been more consistent than your morning coffee, more reliable than your prescription medications. Every morning when you wake up, it's there, reminding you of what you should have been, could have been, would have been, if only you hadn't been you. You know what breaks my heart? It's not that you've made mistakes. We all have. It's that you've become your own prosecutor, judge, and executioner. You've been carrying out a death sentence on your own dreams for years. And the worst part is, you think you're being righteous about it. 67 years old and still punishing yourself for the marriage that didn't work out in your 30s. 73 and still beating yourself up for the business that failed when you were 50. 81 and still carrying the weight of being the parent you think you should have been 30 years ago. When did you become so cruel to yourself? When did you decide that grace was for everyone except the person in your mirror? Here's the devastating truth that's been eating you alive from the inside out. You've been so focused on your failures that you've forgotten God doesn't see them anymore. You've been so consumed with your regrets that you've missed the fact that redemption has been standing right behind you this entire time, waiting for you to turn around. You want to know what that voice really is. That relentless critic that never lets you rest, never lets you hope, never lets you believe you could still matter. That's not conviction. Beloved, that's accusation. And accusation never comes from God. Conviction says, you made a mistake, but you can be restored. Accusation says, you are a mistake and you'll never be enough. Conviction points you toward redemption. Accusation points you toward despair. Conviction whispers hope. Accusation screams hopelessness. And for too many years, you've been listening to the wrong voice. But listen to what God says about your past, your regrets, your self-hatred. Isaiah 43:18-19 cuts through every lie you've believed about yourself. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Did you catch that? Forget the former things. Not remember them as cautionary tales. Not use them as weapons against yourself. Forget them. God isn't just offering you a fresh start. He's commanding you to release the very things you've been using to torture yourself. You think your past disqualifies you. Tell that to Moses, who murdered a man and still split the Red Sea. Tell that to David, who committed adultery and murder and still became a man after God's own heart. Tell that to Paul, who persecuted Christians and still wrote half the New Testament. Your regrets aren't your disqualifications. They're your qualifications for grace. But here's what terrifies hell about July 12th, 2025. It's not just the date when God reveals his plan for your future. It's the date when you finally stop agreeing with the voice of accusation and start believing the voice of your Father. The enemy has been using your own reflection as his greatest weapon against you. Every time you look in the mirror and see failure. Every time you remember your past and feel shame. Every time you consider your age and feel despair. You're doing his work for him. But what if I told you that the person staring back at you in that mirror isn't your enemy? What if that reflection is actually God's masterpiece? Refined by fire, seasoned by suffering, prepared for purpose. The question that will determine your destiny isn't whether you've made mistakes. The question is, will you finally stop punishing yourself for being human and start celebrating what God has made you through it all? Because the clock isn't just ticking toward July 12th. It's ticking away from a lifetime of self-hatred and toward a future where you finally see yourself the way heaven sees you. But first, you have to decide, are you going to keep being your own worst enemy? Or are you ready to discover who you really are when grace gets the final word, chosen one? I need you to feel the weight of this moment right now. As heaven's clock ticks toward July 12th, 2025, I can see you sitting there wrestling with a question that's been haunting you for years. The question that wakes you at 3 a.m. and follows you through your daily routine like a shadow you can't shake. Am I finished? Did I waste my time? Is there anything left for someone like me? Stop. Just stop right there. That question isn't coming from your spirit. It's coming from a lie so deep, so pervasive, that it's convinced an entire generation of God's most seasoned warriors that their battle days are over. You think you're too old? Moses was 80 when God handed him the assignment that would define human history. 80 years old when he stood before Pharaoh and declared, "Let my people go." You think you're too tired? Caleb was 85 when he looked at the mountain everyone else feared and said, "Give me this mountain. I want the giants." But here's what breaks my heart, and here's what should shatter every lie you've been believing about your age. You've been convinced that your wrinkles are disqualifications when they're actually your credentials. Every gray hair is a certificate of survival. Every line on your face is a map of victories that younger generations have never even imagined. The world told you to retire. God told you to refine. The world told you to step back. Heaven told you to step up. The world told you your time is over. But I'm here with a word straight from the throne room of eternity. Your time hasn't expired. It's been refined. You want to know why the enemy has been whispering lies about your age, your relevance, your purpose. Because he knows something you've forgotten. He knows that a 70-year-old saint who's walked through fire and still trusts God is more dangerous to his kingdom than 1,000 young believers who've never been tested. You've survived what should have killed you. You've buried people you thought you'd grow old with. You've watched dreams die and somehow found the strength to dream again. You've been broken in ways that would destroy weaker souls. And yet here you are, still breathing, still believing, still standing. That's not luck. Beloved, that's preparation. Listen to what the Holy Spirit is declaring over your life right now through Psalm 92:14. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green. Did you hear that? Still bear fruit? Not once bore fruit. Not used to bear fruit. Still bear fruit. Present tense. Active voice. Ongoing reality. Fresh and green at 70. Fresh and green at 80. Fresh and green at 90. While the world sees aging, God sees maturing. While society sees decline, heaven sees refinement. While others see your sunset, the Almighty sees your sunrise. But here's the revelation that's going to change everything about how you see your remaining years. You don't need permission to step into your purpose. You need remembrance. You don't need someone to anoint you for your assignment. You need someone to remind you that you were anointed before you took your first breath. The calling on your life doesn't have an expiration date. The gifts within you don't come with age restrictions. The fire in your spirit doesn't diminish with the years it gets concentrated, purified, refined into something the younger generation desperately needs to see. You think this generation needs another young voice with big dreams and no scars? No, they need your voice. They need the wisdom that only comes from walking through valleys they've never seen. They need the faith that only comes from trusting God in darkness they can't imagine. They need the hope that only comes from watching Him be faithful for decades. Your grandchildren are watching you right now, wondering if this faith thing is real or just something people talk about on Sundays. They need to see it lived out in the flesh of someone who's been tested by time and proven by trials. Your neighborhood is waiting for someone who's been refined by fire to speak life into places of death. Your community needs someone who's learned that God's promises don't have expiration dates to remind them that it's never too late for a miracle. The clock isn't counting down to your end. Chosen one, it's counting down to your commissioning. July 12th, 2025 isn't marking your final chapter. It's announcing your greatest chapter, the one where everything you've learned, everything you've survived, everything you've been through finally makes sense. Your time has not expired. It's been refined. And today, heaven's alarm isn't sounding the end. It's announcing your beginning. Right now, I feel the Holy Spirit moving in this place. Someone listening to these words just felt something shift in their spirit. Something that's been dormant for years just stirred to life. That's not nostalgia, that's activation. If you're still breathing, your mission still stands. and heaven's been holding this hour for you. I want you to do something that might feel strange, but it's absolutely necessary. In the comments below, I want you to write your spiritual name, not the name on your birth certificate that carries all the baggage, not what they called you, the name your spirit knows, the one you'll wear into eternity, the one heaven has been calling you all along. Because, chosen one, it's time to stop hiding behind the lie of being too old and start walking in the truth of being perfectly positioned for such a time as this. Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, I need you to carry these truths deep in your heart like precious jewels that will never lose their shine. Remember, this July 12th, 2025 isn't just another date, it's your divine appointment with destiny. Heaven's clock isn't ticking toward your ending, it's counting down to your beginning. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. Every gray hair is a crown of wisdom. Every scar is proof you survived what was meant to destroy you. And most importantly, remember that your time has not expired, it's been refined. God doesn't retire his chosen ones. He refines them for their greatest assignment. But here's what I need you to know with absolute certainty. You are never walking this journey alone. Even when the nights feel endless, even when doubt whispers lies about your worth, even when the world tries to convince you that your season is over, the God who spoke galaxies into existence is still speaking life into your circumstances. He hasn't brought you this far to abandon you now. And right here, in this community of believers, you have thousands of brothers and sisters who understand your struggles because they're walking the same path. We're praying for each other, supporting each other, and rising together. You're not just watching a video, you're part of a family that refuses to let anyone walk alone. Let me ask you one question that will echo in your heart long after this video ends. When you stand before the throne of God someday, what will you say when He asks, "What did you do with the mission I gave you when you heard heaven's clock ticking? Now, let me place my hand on your shoulder through these words and pray over you with the authority of someone who has walked with God for decades and seen His faithfulness in every season." Heavenly Father, I come before your throne right now, lifting up every precious soul who has journeyed with us today. Lord, you see them sitting there, some in quiet kitchens, with morning coffee growing cold, others lying awake in the darkness, wrestling with questions only you can answer. You know their names, their struggles, their secret fears about whether their best days are behind them. I pray that you would place your mighty hand upon them right now. Let them feel your presence like a warm embrace, surrounding them with love that casts out all fear. Remind them that they are fearfully and wonderfully made, that their steps are ordered by you, and that their latter days will be greater than their former days. Father, open every door that man has closed. Heal every wound that time hasn't touched. Restore every dream that disappointment tried to steal. Give them supernatural strength that defies their age, wisdom that surpasses their education, and peace that exceeds their understanding. Lord, I pray specifically for their families. Bring healing where there's been hurt, unity where there's been division, and understanding where there's been misunderstanding. Touch their health, Father. Where there's pain, bring relief. Where there's sickness, bring healing. Where there's weakness, bring your strength. And God, I pray that every person listening right now would step boldly into the mission you've prepared for them, knowing that you go before them, you walk beside them, and you have already made a way where there seemed to be no way. Let July 12th, 2025 mark not just a moment in time, but a transformation in their hearts. Let this be the day they stop believing the lies about being too old and start walking in the truth about being perfectly positioned for such a time as this. In the mighty name of Jesus, who conquered death itself so that we might live abundantly, I pray. Amen. Now, beloved, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what's stirring in your spirit right now. What is God speaking to your heart? What fears are you releasing? What dreams are you reclaiming? Don't hold back. This community is here to celebrate with you and pray with you. If you have questions, concerns, or just need someone to agree with you in prayer, don't hesitate to reach out. We read every comment, and we believe in the power of corporate prayer to move mountains. And if this message has touched your soul, if you felt God speaking directly to you through these words, please share this video with someone else who needs to hear it. You might be the vessel God uses to awaken another chosen one who's been waiting for this exact message. Remind them that they're not alone, that their story isn't over, and that heaven's clock is ticking in their favor. Thank you for spending this sacred time with me. Thank you for opening your heart, for listening with your spirit, and for allowing God to speak to you through these words. Your faithfulness to watch until the very end tells me everything I need to know about your heart. You're ready for what God has prepared if you haven't already. Please subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell every week. We're releasing messages specifically designed to encourage, equip, and empower God's chosen ones. You belong here. This is your spiritual family. Remember, chosen one, heaven's clock is ticking, but it's not counting down your end. It's announcing your beginning. Your mission still stands, and so do you. Until we meet again, walk in the authority of your calling, rest in the certainty of His love, and know that your greatest chapter is just beginning. God bless you mightily. Beloved, go forth and shine.